was the land of legendary kings, massive empires, and remarkable cultural achievements. From poetry and philosophy to architecture and governance, Persia helped shape the foundations of human civilization. Yet in the year 1935, something strange happened. Without a war, without the collapse of an empire, and without a dramatic revolution at that moment, the world suddenly stopped calling the country Persia. Diplomatic letters, international maps, and global media began using a new name instead: Iran. For a civilization known as Persia for more than 2,000 years, the change seemed sudden and mysterious. Why would a country abandon such a historic and globally recognized name? Was it simply a cultural correction, or was there a deeper political strategy behind it? The answer reveals a fascinating story about identity, power, and the way nations reshape their own image. To understand this transformation, we first have to go back thousands of years to the origins of Persian civilization. The name Persia itself came from an ancient region called Persis, located in the southern part of what is now Iran. This region became famous when a remarkable ruler named Cyrus the Great rose to power around 550 BCE. Cyrus created one of the largest empires the world had ever seen, the Achaemenid Empire. His empire stretched from the eastern Mediterranean all the way to the borders of India. But Cyrus was not only known for conquest. He introduced administrative systems, promoted religious tolerance, and established principles of governance that many historians consider revolutionary for the ancient world. When Greek historians encountered this empire, they referred to its people as Persians because they came from the region of Persis. Over time, the Western world adopted the name Persia to describe the entire empire and its civilization. However, inside the country, people often used a different name. For centuries, locals referred to their land as Iran or Iranshar, words rooted in ancient linguistic traditions. The name Iran comes from an old term meaning land of the Aryans. In its historical context, this word did not carry the racial meanings it later acquired in the 20th century. Instead, it simply referred to the Indo-Iranian peoples who had settled the region thousands of years earlier. So while the outside world used the name Persia, internally the population had long recognized the name Iran. For generations, the two names existed side by side. Persia in global language and diplomacy, and Iran in cultural and historical identity. This quiet dual identity continued until the early 20th century, when the country faced growing political and economic pressure. By the early 1900s, Persia was struggling with foreign influence. Powerful empires such as Russia and United Kingdom had gained enormous control over its trade, resources, and political decisions. Oil concessions and financial agreements gave outside powers significant leverage over the nation's economy. In the middle of this instability, a military officer rose to prominence. His name was Reza Shah. In 1921, he led a coup that eventually allowed him to seize power. By 1925, he crowned himself king and established the Pahlavi dynasty. Reza Shah was determined to transform his country into a modern and centralized state. Inspired by modernization movements happening elsewhere, he believed that Persia needed sweeping reforms to compete with powerful nations. He built railways, modernized the military, established national institutions, and attempted to reduce the influence of tribal leaders and regional authorities. Much like Mustafa Kemal Ataturk had done in Turkey, Reza Shah wanted to reshape the identity of his nation. He believed that a new national narrative would strengthen unity and independence. Part of that narrative involved changing how the country presented itself to the world. In 1935, Reza Shah made a formal request to foreign governments and international organizations. From that point forward, he asked them to stop using the name Persia and instead refer to the country as Iran. It was not a casual suggestion. It was an official diplomatic request that reshaped how the world described the nation. Governments, newspapers, and global institutions gradually adopted the new terminology. Within a short time, the name Iran replaced Persia in most international contexts. The change surprised many observers, especially in Europe and America, where the name Persia carried centuries of cultural recognition. Reza Shah justified the decision by arguing that Iran was the authentic historical name used by the country's own people. He wanted the nation's international identity to reflect its internal heritage. The move was also part of a broader effort to emphasize national independence and break psychological ties with colonial influence. However, historians believe there may have been additional political motivations. During the 1930s, the concept of Aryan heritage had become widely discussed in Europe, particularly in Germany, where Adolf Hitler promoted controversial racial theories centered around Aryan identity. Because the name Iran derived from a word meaning land of the Aryans, some scholars suggest that highlighting this heritage may have helped strengthen diplomatic relations with Germany during that era. Others argue that the connection has been exaggerated and that the primary motivation was national pride and modernization. Regardless of the precise reasoning, the name change was implemented and quickly recognized internationally. The decision sparked debate both inside and outside the country. Many intellectuals and cultural figures worried that abandoning the name Persia would erase the historical brand associated with the nation's extraordinary cultural achievements. For centuries, Persian literature, art, and philosophy had been celebrated across the world. Poets like Rumi and Hafez were globally known as Persian cultural icons. The word Persia carried a sense of artistic prestige and historical depth. Critics feared that losing the name would weaken that cultural recognition. Eventually, the debate became significant enough that the government addressed it publicly. In 1959, officials clarified that both names could be used internationally. Iran would remain the official political name of the country, while Persia could still refer to the civilization, culture, and historical tradition. In this way, the two identities continued to coexist, much as they had for centuries before the 20th century. The story of Persia becoming Iran also reflects a broader global pattern. Countries often change their names to reshape how they are perceived. For instance, Myanmar replaced the colonial name Burma. Sri Lanka adopted its modern name after independence from the colonial title Ceylon. Even Turkey recently requested that the international community use its native spelling rather than the anglicized form Turkey. These changes show how names are more than simple labels. They are symbols of sovereignty, identity, and political vision. Looking back, the transition from Persia to Iran was not the disappearance of one civilization and the creation of another. Instead, it was a shift in how an ancient society presented itself to the modern world. The culture, language, and history remained deeply connected to the legacy of Persia, even as the political state adopted the name Iran. Three important lessons emerge from this story. First, the name Iran has ancient roots and was used internally long before the 20th century. Second, the name Persia was largely a foreign label derived from Greek descriptions of the region of Persis. And third, the 1935 name change was part of a broader modernization project led by Reza Shah to strengthen national identity and independence. Today, when people hear the name Iran, they often think about modern geopolitical tensions or contemporary politics. Yet behind that name stands one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. A culture that shaped art, literature, philosophy, and governance for thousands of years. The transformation from Persia to Iran reminds us that names can evolve, political systems can change, and global perceptions can shift dramatically. But the deeper identity of a civilization often survives those changes. In the end, Persia never truly disappeared. It simply continued its long history under a name that had always existed within its own people's memory.